Hey. So, I was going to talk about a series of events relating to Marilyn Monroe and John F. Kennedy previous to both of their deaths. Now, in case you didn't know or did know and forgot, I'll go ahead and align some dates up so that it makes a little bit more sense on a conspiracy going on with murder. And probably by a standalone group close to the President of the United States that's still in the vicinity of Washington, D.C. today. Marilyn Monroe sang to an entire group of the President JFK, his brothers, and their surrounding friends, family, cabinet of the White House, Congress and Senate members, and everybody knows this song, and everybody knows this party, Happy Birthday, Mr. President, in May 1962. It's very, very, very seductive, and there was a lot of news reports about who is she sleeping with, JFK, his brother, and it pretty much was capitalized on by this song in the midst of this ongoing promiscuous romance with a lot of rumors swirling. Now, if you're close to the president and there's this beautiful blonde that's an actress and a model, you can assume there's a particular amount of jealousy flying around anybody that was watching this romance take place. Now, with this song, it basically brought to light just exactly how sexy and seductive this Marilyn Monroe was. And she was found dead by a drug overdose 3 months later. Now, the woman that was responsible for this blonde seduction at the White House is gone. But the man that this was about is still walking around. His brother is still walking around. And if there was jealousy, it might still be there. But you're a murderer and you live at the White House and you're still thinking that you're mad. And you're thinking, how can I assassinate the president and not get caught? You think and you think and you think. Now, most people don't know, but there's like 100,000 dams in the world. You can look it up on Wikipedia, how many dams are in the United States of America. It's like 34,000 or something. Now the world, you can look up and it's just a lot. Now, in these desolate areas of the world, you can assume when you look at any number of videos about dams, when you see small villages of these little countries, that this gigantic man-made dam is right over their village so that they could make more agricultural farmland, so that they can make produce to make as an export to the United States from far away. That they didn't build those themselves. And it puts into light the concept of how wealthy the United States is to control that many dams and build themselves with their own income so that they could take the rewards of the imports of agricultural produce. Now, with that said, and the power that comes with controlling the produce of foreign countries, you can assume that even the more economically advanced countries are still under the wealth of the United States and ownership of the United States. One dam in particular that is among the top 10 dam failures on YouTube worldwide, there's a bit of a conspiracy surrounding just exactly what happened. And I was watching this recently on YouTube, and it's like the 6th dam. It's a 10-minute long video. And it was funny because it didn't mention the year that the failure happened, and all of the rest of the dams, when it was reporting about all of the top 10 dam failures in the world, all said the year. And so I decided to look up that dam and what year it was. And it, as it turns out, was the year 1963. October 1963. And I remembered something about that time period with John F. Kennedy's assassination. So I looked up when was John F. Kennedy assassinated. And it was 1 month after this dam failure in 1963. Well, the interesting thing about this reported news of this dam failure in Italy was that it happened to be, out of 100,000 dams worldwide, the tallest dam in the world, 60 miles away from Venice, Italy. Now, the controversy is just exactly how the failure happened. Now, to describe the failure, well, what ended up happening was everybody in this town near Venice, Italy, looks up and there's a giant wave of water a half a mile high coming over the top of the tallest dam in the world. And later it was scrutinized about just exactly what caused it, and finally everybody said that it was an avalanche that caused a ripple a half a mile high that killed 2,000 people in Italy in October of 1963. Now, it just so happens that if you're the guy that murdered JFK and you didn't want anybody to find you, and you didn't want anybody looking around the near close friends and family of John F. Kennedy, because you know Marilyn Monroe was already killed a year before that, that you have yourself among the underground of people that talk an alibi of everybody near and around the murder of JFK, saying it was probably someone in Italy, because they just think that that water crashing over the top was just a little bit too high. An avalanche couldn't have caused that. So they, on the underground, must have talked and said, I think. Now, this is interesting, because if the United States owns all the dams and you want to make an alibi for yourself, and you own all the dams, you own your own dam and you detonate a bomb underneath it that creates a giant wave over the top. So everybody on the underground would talk and say, I think that that was an unusually high wave of water, and the 2,000 dead people make me mad, so I think that that was a terrorist attack from the United States. Therefore, in the United States, after the assassination, the people on the underground, politicians, very, very high-end prostitutes, well, they would all go, it must have been somebody in Italy that thought that it wasn't an avalanche and it was a detonation, and they retaliated by killing our president. Now, that technically creates the perfect alibi for the one that murdered JFK. By effectively actually hurting your own dam, or at least splashing water over the top, you've now created an underground conversation that takes the pressure off of you and makes everybody look at Italy. And in fact, Italy was correct in the terrorist attack, except that it was on purpose just to deter everybody from thinking that a United States member of the cabinet of the White House actually killed JFK because of that one single party and that one single song. And it just so happened to be, out of all the dams in the world, that this one person owns the tallest one of all of them, as if Marilyn Monroe was at the top of the podium in the biggest wave she could possibly make to the President of the United States, just out of sheer jealousy. So, thus creating a possible motive of anybody near the dead president that it could have been an Italian, even though the United States owned their own dam and did it to themselves just to create an alibi that they didn't do it. And if that's the way they operate, and that's a big giant boot, the shape of Italy, then is this terrorist that belongs at the White House always repeating the same crime when he gets upset or jealous? Meaning the big boot that kicked a field goal from the Pentagon that hit down the Twin Towers. Because 2 planes hit the Twin Towers, 1 plane barely hit this end of the Pentagon, thus creating a giant foot that kicked a field goal. They do things on the highest level imaginable, always recreating the giant boot. Now, if they're always capable of being jealous, and Italy is now plagued with 1,000 people a day dying, is there someone at the White House that's creating this coronavirus pandemic just so they could commit a crime and misdirect everybody to thinking that it's always an Italian? Because the Italians are confused and they don't believe that it was an avalanche. So because they don't believe that it was by natural causes, they're constantly attacking America, making terrorist attacks, and they're the ones that keep on doing the terrorist attacks, while all the while it's somebody within the cabinet of the White House strung out on jealousy and recreating the boot of the constantly mad Italians that just can't get over the fact that it couldn't have been an avalanche, even though the ironic part is that the entire time they were exactly right. Somebody detonated a bomb at the bottom of that floodwater, standing behind the tallest dam in the world. And now we have a pandemic, maybe to misdirect everybody so that they can commit another ultimate crime, always blaming the deranged Europeans, because they just don't think that it was an avalanche, even though they were always right. It wasn't an avalanche. I guess what I'm saying is we have another Marilyn Monroe at the White House, and if they're constantly repeating history, are we always looking for another reason why Europeans can't stop making terrorist attacks on U.S. soil?